AMD builds a silo. Veeam is under fire. Mirantis makes DRS again. Snowflake brings the MFA. RAG gets optimized, and we're going to take a closer look at Google and Wiz in this episode of the Gestalt IT Rundown. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gestalt IT Rundown. Today is Wednesday, July the 17th. It is National Hot Dog Day, and if you like your hot dogs on the extreme side, you should get them a tattoo because it's National Tattoo Day as well. But I, fortunately, have hit the lottery this week because I am joined by a co-host, not Stephen Foskett, because he's out doing fun things this week. Mr. John Schwartz is joining us. John, welcome to the show. Tell everybody who you are.
Hey everybody, I'm John Schwartz. I'm the content writer, senior content writer for TechStrong Group. I just joined a couple of weeks ago. Previously, I was at USA Today and Dow Jones, and I'm very happy to be here.
Well, we're very happy to have you here too. And unfortunately, as a journalist, you stumbled into the wrong show because this is the Gestalt AT Rundown, where we take an irreverent, snarky look at the news this week. But maybe you'll keep things fun around here. I know I need the help.
Well, you know what? Actually, this is something I missed doing at the other places. I had to be buttoned up. I couldn't have any fun. I couldn't have enough fun. Now I'm having a lot more fun.
Awesome. Well, let's jump into the stories for the week so we can get going. On Monday, a new company called Cerabyte debuted, claiming that they will revolutionize the secondary storage market with ceramic, laser-etched storage on glass. This startup was founded in 2022 and came out of the University of Vienna. It's leveraging silicon etching technology and visible laser light to create petabyte-scale storage that doesn't use magnetic media at all. The goal is to use common materials and components to make the technology cost-effective. Now, I'm not going to lie, this sounds like some next-level storage stuff to me. So why don't we let the storage master take it from here? Stephen?
As you know, I am a storage nerd and kind of a storage fanatic. So I was thrilled to be able to get on the phone with the Cerabyte team for a pre-briefing last week. Let me tell you first off that there have been a lot of attempts to revolutionize storage technology over the years. I'm sure that you know how flash impacted hard disk. You may not know that there's continuing use of tape technology even today, and if you listen to the rundown, you probably know about the failure of Intel's Optane technology. Well, this isn't any of those things. This thing is entirely new. Well, in a way, it's not. As Cerabyte themselves would tell you, their inspiration came from stone tablets. That's right. They last forever. They use no power. They can't be modified, though they can be destroyed. And they have a lot of potential if you're able to etch your cuneiform markings using a industrial particle beam. No joke. Cerabyte's product is essentially, well, it looks like a tape library. It acts sort of like a tape library. It even uses LTO cartridges to hold a sheet of ceramic on glass that is etched using the same technology as in the semiconductor fabs. So there's a lot of cool things going on here. The first thing to note is that this thing actually looks practical, like it might actually work. So they're using the same semiconductor etching technology that already exists. In fact, they're kind of behind the curve intentionally on that stuff because that way they can leverage existing technology instead of having to invent all new heads, which is something that has plagued some storage technologies, including optical technology and so on in the past. They're also improving performance by being able to write in parallel, not just a few bits, but a ton, massively parallel writing using these semiconductor etchers, and they're able to read in parallel using the same technology used in microscopes. Another thing that's held back a lot of other recording technology is area, surface area. A lot of the time, new technologies have tried to fit a disk form factor, spin it around, and write linearly. Well, that really wastes a lot of areal density. And one of the reasons that tapes are so cheap, just in addition to the fact that the media is cheap, is that they run the media underneath the head so you can have a lot of surface area. Well, Cerabyte is actually using a full square of media within that tape-ish cartridge, which gives them a lot of precious density on which to write their data. So they have a lot of things going for them. But by far the biggest thing that they have going for them, or biggest things, is number one, as I said, this media is write once, full stop. You cannot modify it. It is literally holes etched on ceramic. So from a offline or data protection, data retention standpoint, it really, really is solid. You're not going to be able to go back and modify the contents, though I guess you could destroy it. The other thing that's going for them is that it is actually fairly cheap, proven technology, even if their application of it is completely wild. So, from a getting it to market standpoint, it might actually be able to work. In fact, the company is announcing on Monday, they announced that they actually have a prototype. I don't know if it's ready to go, but they're building a prototype that will hold about a petabyte or two in a rack, and that they're planning on scaling this to 100 petabytes in a rack by 2030. Now, the technology has gotten a lot of attention. As you can imagine, spies and military and people like that love the fact that it's impervious to electromagnetic pulse and hackers and all that sort of thing. It's also getting a lot of attention because it's very green. Essentially, it's inexpensive. It doesn't require a lot of power. You don't have to migrate things forward. It's pretty neat. Will it work? Well, I'm not going to guess whether it's going to work or not. It seems like it's got some potential. All I can say is I'm going to be watching the Cerabyte team very, very carefully going forward.
All right, thanks for that, Stephen. Moving on, if I told you that a ransomware crew was exploiting a year-old patched vulnerability, would you call me crazy? Well, Veeam customers wouldn't, because they're under attack from estate ransomware, and those folks are taking advantage of something that Veeam thought they fixed back in 2023. It's a fun little bug that allows an unauthenticated backup user to grab an encrypted backup credential database, and that means that some of the people in the hacking for hire space are getting really lucky on National Lottery Day. It appears that estate ransomware is using the exploit in combination with other remote access hacks to gather as much data as possible before they encrypt it and then try to convince people to pay them to get it back. John, why is a year-old bug resurfacing?
Probably because the company that's under attack didn't address it in the first place. I mean, it's been a year-long vulnerability that they didn't patch, and it's something that you and I had talked about and discussed was you need to catch these problems early. If they don't, they metastasize into something much worse. It's like a snowflake turning into a snowball. And it kind of makes me think, Tom, about the dangers of letting something linger. Maybe you don't know about it, or maybe you pass over it or gloss over it. And it also kind of gave me pause to think about OpenAI and their vulnerability that they didn't talk about until they were publicly outed by the New York Times. They have a flaw of their message boards, people looking at their message boards, that dates back to at least April 2023. And it makes me wonder what is happening now within the company. And it's just a cautionary tale, basically, about Veeam, about any company. Like, if you don't catch something early, whether it's a bug or say an illness, if you're a human being, an illness, you don't treat it, you don't address it, these things are going to get much worse. And I just shudder to think how many other companies are in the same situation. Mirantis is adding a dynamic schedule to their OpenStack implementation. The goal is to better utilize infrastructure resources in Kubernetes by letting the scheduling algorithm sort everything out. The feature is seen as a way to bring the popular VMware Dynamic Resource Scheduler, DRS, functionality into OpenStack. This isn't the first time someone has tried, but Mirantis is taking a different look at it by using kernel live migration tooling. What do you make of all this, Tom?
So I think it's a very interesting play by Mirantis. The article that we linked in the show notes absolutely mentions the fact that this is not the first time someone's tried to create dynamic resource scheduling in Kubernetes. And I think part of the reason why it hasn't worked in the past is because a lot of people who use Kubernetes looked at this and went, but why? Because Kubernetes kind of doesn't have this monolithic infrastructure support system. If I want to dynamically move things around, I don't move them. I destroy the container over here and I recreate it over on a different cluster, and it's done. Like there's no stickiness to it. But that's not what Mirantis is going after. So I don't know if you've heard of this company called VMware by Broadcom. Yeah, a lot. They're a niche company. They make some very specialized stuff. They're kind of up and coming. Okay, who am I kidding? They're not. They were the 800-pound gorilla in the virtualization market, and they kind of created these standards, if you will, that a lot of companies have stuck to for a long time. I mean, how many times have you heard people say that we need to be able to vMotion these containers between clusters? Again, the Kubernetes engineers are going, but why? Because that's the terminology and the methodology that people are used to using. They expect to be able to live migrate VMs, heavyweight containers, for those of you out there who are not up on the vExpert parlance like I am. But they want to be able to migrate these machines between infrastructure clusters. But then unfortunately, people tend to prioritize their favorite thing. Fun fact: you can pick out most fake profiles on any system anywhere by looking at the number of birth dates that are January 1. Why? Because January 1 is the default month and day, and they just change the year so that they have a good spread of people. Likewise, what's everyone's favorite AWS instance? US East 1, because it's the default. So basically what they're saying is we're going to create this resource scheduler that allows you to, every once in a while, go move things off of the default instance that you keep putting stuff on. That only makes sense for people who are trying to migrate off of a system that had a dynamic resource scheduler and put it onto a system where they need to learn to break those shackles. So Mirantis is basically putting training wheels on any people that are migrating from VMware by Broadcom to Mirantis, and they're going to say, okay, we're going to let you do the things you've been doing before because that seems to be the most comfortable thing that you're okay with right now. And then we're going to teach you how to really use containers. So I expect that this is going to be a feature that is going to have some value, but it's not going to be a huge selling point for Mirantis once people have migrated their workloads and kind of relearned the way that Kubernetes works. But again, good on you, because if you can actually make it work this time as opposed to the other false starts that they've had, hey, I'll take a win any day. Regular listeners of the Rundown are no doubt familiar with the saga of Snowflake that has led to a number of customers being hacked, including Ticketmaster and, as of late, AT&T. The culprit, according to Snowflake, was a lack of multi-factor authentication on accounts. You may recall that I stated in my analysis of these exploits a few weeks ago that the solution was to have Snowflake make MFA mandatory on all accounts, right? Guess what Snowflake did last week? Yeah, they created a setting that allows admins to enforce MFA on all user accounts. In a stunning case of shutting the barn door after the horses have escaped, Snowflake is allowing the setting on local and SSO users, but of course they don't recommend it for service accounts because nobody ever hacks those, right? Nobody hacks service accounts. Users will be prompted to enable MFA the next time they log into the user interface if you decide to push this setting down. Now, I don't want to say I told you so to Snowflake, but
did, though.
I'm going to find a creative way to allow you, John, to tell them that Tom told them so.
Tom told them so. And you know what? This is looking back at Veeam again. We have a kind of a consistent theme here, right? Kind of lack of diligence. You don't patch your vulnerability. You don't have two-factor, multi-factor authentication when logging in. These are simple things that probably shouldn't have led to much larger problems. I think we can even go back and think about what happened with SolarWinds. I think about the post office situation in the UK. I think of a situation in the US especially where we don't have like a national safety board for the internet or for cybersecurity. We do ostensibly. It's this independent organization that basically has no authority, no funding, and is run and sorts by members of big tech. So in a sense, it shows the clear lack of standards and accountability that we need in the cybersecurity community, especially given the growth and the propulsive nature of AI, where more data is going to be at stake. I mentioned in Veeam OpenAI, the reason OpenAI is going to become a target and is a target of hackers is that there's a great repository of data there. And this is going to happen to other AI companies that collect data. And again, they've done this, they've done this. Now we're in an era maybe of trust. I think we really are in an era of trust among the customers and consumers of AI. That's the next step. So these cautionary tales that we've mentioned regarding Snowflake and Veeam play into a larger, more paranoid storyline that I think is going to get worse unless we figure out a way to somehow get a partnership between the government and big tech. Yeah, that's going to happen, to oversee the security of our data. Retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, has been touted as the solution to AI hallucination. But conventional databases aren't well suited to being queried by LLMs. Vector search algorithms are a better way for large language models to interact with database engines, but the common BM25 was designed for search, not AI. Now, Qdrant has introduced the BM42 vector search algorithm, which promises to be more accurate and cost-effective for LLMs. What's your take on this bit of database news, Tom?
I think it's important for people to understand that algorithms don't search for things the same way that people search for things. And because I mean, I know this because I'm currently dealing with my father-in-law who can't search through his email to find something. He just scrolls through pages of emails looking for a thing that he thinks might have happened around this time. Whereas me, as someone who's a little bit more computer savvy, knows that if I go to the search bar and I type in some of the keywords or I type in a date, it will narrow the field so that I'm not looking through as many things, right? AIs don't search like that either. So whereas I would look for something extremely specific by putting in a keyword, what an algorithm is looking for is maybe some more semantic pieces. They're looking to pull in some additional results and try to do some inferencing on them and things like that, which means you don't write SQL queries for that, folks. I will say that in last week's networking field day, we had an amazing presentation from Selector AI. If you go to techfieldday.com or you go to youtube.com/techfieldday, just look for the video from Selector AI that's literally labeled query problem. And basically what it was one of the presenters from Selector AI, Nitin, was trying to explain how we take keywords out of a natural language statement and force them into SQL statements to be able to look up information in a database, right? That's us providing an input for an LLM to go find something. That's inefficient. If there was a way for the LLM to be able to pull that query and ingest that data, but also do it in a way that doesn't require them to load the entire database into memory to do that, that is way more advantageous for the compute resources that we have. Because one of the things that is the most expensive piece of any AI cluster that you're going to build is the high bandwidth memory that's used for inferencing. Guess what? The more of that you use with junk data, the less efficient it becomes and the longer it takes for those search results to get back. And if you don't think that the search times matter, just click on something and then don't pop up any kind of like scroll wheel or something like that as your AI is working in the background. And I guarantee you're going to have a lot of angry users. So for a company like Qdrant to say, well, here we're going to optimize for a vector search that is machine optimized, not people optimize, says that they are understanding that the majority of these searches now are being executed by algorithms, not by people. So they need to optimize the algorithms to work with the machines that are doing the work. And that is going to lead to reduced costs. That's going to lead to hopefully reduced resources. I don't need to buy quite as big of a cluster. And of course, the hope is that you take some of those savings and you use them to invest in our products so that we can make you more efficient. So I'm actually kind of curious to see how that works out. But definitely check out the show notes because there's an amazing TechStrong article about this that you're going to want to check out. It gives you a lot more overview of it. All right, I kind of hinted at it at the very first story of this episode, but we need to take a closer look at the biggest story of the week that actually broke on Sunday, because Google is about to make their biggest acquisition ever, at least at the time of this recording. According to a report that was published in the Wall Street Journal on Sunday, Alphabet is making a bid to purchase security company Wiz for $23 billion. Wiz has spent the last 4 years developing a cloud security platform that has detected some pretty big problems in a number of providers, including one in Microsoft Bing. People still use Bing. Google is finding itself increasingly under fire from a variety of attackers. The move comes as Google is facing some antitrust charges, potentially, from the Department of Justice Oh, and there was another acquisition that we were thinking was going to happen where they were going to buy HubSpot. But now it appears, that meme where the girl's walking down the street and the boyfriend's looking at that, like that is now like Google and HubSpot and Wiz. So, John, I know this is going to be something that a lot of people are already speculating about. I've seen all kinds of crazy stuff just in the last 48 hours, but I wanted to get your take on this. Why would Google be looking to buy Wiz for $23 billion?
Yeah, it's their largest acquisition ever, and it comes a couple years after they bought Mandiant for $5.4 billion. So we have to keep that in mind. They've actually shown a more of a interest I guess, acquisitions of digital companies, digital cybersecurity companies, and it kind of coincides with their dive into AI, but it also coincides with a number of compromised government agencies and big organizations that has been growing. Um, I think the one that got everyone's attention, especially, was SolarWinds software being exploited. So intruders had access to the government and major corporations. It's as Mitch Ashley, our chief technology advisor and CTO at TechStrong and Futurum, has said that Google's security strategy unfolds as they look to acquire Wiz. It's going to propel Google to the center of many enterprise cloud security strategies by covering containers, software supply chain security, cloud workload, CI/CD pipeline, code and data security, and more. And in a sense, also, Wiz is going to complement Mandiant's deep threat and security monitor capabilities. So it's kind of a natural piece to complement the enterprise cloud security solutions delivered by Google. Um, it's almost mandatory at this point if it happens, as you said earlier.
I'm kind of at the point where we've seen some of these acquisitions take a little bit longer to pan out, but I think that this is a big one. There's enough rumor going on that this one's probably going to happen, but I think you're spot on. This is going to propel Google up the chain. They're not going to overtake one or two. Like they can't eclipse AWS or Azure currently. But what I think they can do is cement themselves in third place as a specialized provider for ultra secure clouds. And who would be the one that you think would want to take the most advantage of that? Well, in this case, it would be government. So we know that there's been a lot of brouhaha about the Jedi contract and did AWS need it? And Larry Ellison was raising all of everybody's hackles about whether or not he thought Oracle deserved it. And we know that Oracle has kind of cemented itself as the medical cloud company because of all of their work with Cerner. So I think that Google has kind of said, we know that we are a huge target for advanced hacking techniques, nation state backed people, and Mandiant has shown that over and over and over again. I think the Mandiant pickup was a brilliant move by them, by the way. But now you've got to take the intelligence that Mandiant offers and you've got to operationalize it. And I think that's what Wiz gives them the capability of doing. Wiz is going to be out there protecting all these containers, making sure that you're not under attack from any, 0 days by design are not knowable, but as soon as we see one, we're able to close it, or we're able to detect that there's stuff going on, and maybe there's smoke where there's fire as well. So I think what you're going to see from them is you're going to see this push on security. We have Wiz now. Maybe they still offer it to other companies. Maybe they still offer it as like a service. But I think what'll happen is over time, it will become more insular and it'll be focused more on Google's cloud offerings. And then Google's going to kind of parlay that into, if you need something to be ultra secure, we're the best platform to run that on. So I think you'll start seeing maybe a little bit of workload migration. It'll probably start small at first. Like you'll have like maybe some financial services stuff that'll get uploaded there, or maybe some, more protected information. But eventually they're going to wholesale move it over there. Now, remember that ultra secure can also mean ultra user unfriendly. So Google has to very carefully balance that act of we're a lot more protected, but at the same time, not causing users to get so fed up with the system that they just kind of want to throw their hands up in the air and say, enough is enough.
Yeah, one thing you alluded to also is the antitrust concerns. And I think because Google is generally acknowledged and will continue to be number three in this market that we're describing, maybe that gives them some sort of latitude. I think they got to make the deal fairly quickly, though, because as the election's coming up, there's a belief that FTC is even more aggressively targeting M&A activity. and they've made a very big play. Lena Khan, the chair, has made a very big play to stop or at least discourage big tech acquisitions. Um, if this were to extend beyond the election and if Trump were to be reelected eventually, maybe then the coast is clear. But this is kind of a dicey time. I think you're right, though. This is probably going to happen. It seems imminent, according to the reports I've read, and it seems a lot more solid than the HubSpot and the other various acquisitions that big tech does that seem to fall away or evaporate at the last minutes.
And don't forget that even if the acquisition is announced, it's always incumbent upon organizations, so that the FTC, the FCC, whoever, to take a closer look at it. As we learned today, actually, they're taking a look at IBM's purchase of HashiCorp. So even if this does happen, even if they do, I don't know, sell a division and decide to go in, it's still the FTC could come back and go, wait a minute, we want to take a closer look at this.
Yeah, they've actually in the last couple of years they've taken longer. They're not rubber stamping acquisitions anymore. They're taking several months and investigating them deeper. And I think part of that is to discourage companies from going after big deals. And it has worked. It has dissuaded people like Meta from pursuing certain types of deals, or just not even bringing them up or even pursuing them in the first place. So I think in this case, it will be looked at given the size. It is by twice as large an acquisition that Google's ever made.
Yeah. Well, rest assured that if there are any hiccups in the acquisition, you will hear about them here on the Rundown, because we come back every Wednesday with a whole bushel full of news stories that we want to make sure that you're aware of. But a couple of things we also wanted to make sure that you are aware of is some of our upcoming events. So Steven's taking some well-earned time off, but don't worry, he will be back August 5th through the 7th. He's going to be in Kansas City. He is going to be at Tech Field Day Extra at Share. We're going to have some on-site presentations. We're going to learn a lot about the world of mainframes, and I'm sure he's going to have some exciting things for you. Then he will be back in September with AI Field Day 5. That's already shaping up to be a really hot event. We've got a lot of companies who are very interested in that. Make sure you check out techfieldday.com for more details. And while you're there, check out the list of all the other events that we've got coming up, whether you're a fan of security, networking, mobility, AI data infrastructure, cloud. We have something to fit everything. And make sure you bookmark that page, because we're always adding new events as we confirm them. There might be a couple of surprises that'll jump on there. I'm not going to spoil anything. You'll have to stay tuned for more details. Speaking of staying tuned, if people want to learn a little bit more about some of the stuff that you're writing, where can they go to do that?
I think the best place to look would be the techstrong.ai dashboard. I'm writing a lot about AI, specifically, as we mentioned, I wrote about Google and Wiz. I'm writing about customer service centers. There's some surveys that are coming out. They're going to show that customer service agents actually like AI. They're embracing it. Who would have thunk it?
Well, that is awesome.
Yeah, and it is kind of counterintuitive story. We also have Salesforce and C3.ai are doing some big AI news this week.
Cool. Well, make sure you tune in for that and read up on the techstrong.ai dashboard. And you can stay tuned for us, because we're here every Wednesday on the Rundown. We publish our episodes on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/GestaltIT video. We also publish on gestaltit.com with all of the show notes and links to the stories that we pulled for this fun little jaunt. But we also do a podcast feed if you are the kind of person who would prefer to listen to us while you're mowing your yard or painting something. We can do that as well. We will be back next week with more great stories. Hopefully the heat will have broken by that point, but if not, the hottest stories, hottest things going on will be here on the Gestalt IT Rundown. So for my co-host John, for myself, and for Stephen, who is hopefully enjoying himself, wish you all a very happy Wednesday. Take care of yourselves, and we will see you next week.